Hi, Sally. Dan, you look like you're at Villanova.
Want to read all the,
Well, it's 7:31 now. Should we wait a few minutes in case people are running late? Or would you like me to get started here?
I say we get started. We're here on time, and so
Let's do it. Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks so much. I see that we have some returning faces from our last webinars. And then welcome to everybody who this is your first time. We're so happy to have you. My name is Lacey Michelson. I work for the Augustinians at Augustinian Defenders of the Rights of the Poor, and I'm on the Commission for Justice and Peace. And I'll be introducing this webinar today. So just so you all know, this webinar is being recorded. So just so you know that. And I will be muting you all during the presentation. As Professor Pistone said, you're welcome to introduce yourselves using the chat. It should be down the bottom of your screen. You'd be able to introduce yourselves. For today, we are going to be using the See, Judge, Act model. And you'll hear a little bit more about that, and hopefully maybe you read up on it a little bit too. So first, Professor Pistone will speak. First we'll go into breakout sessions, which I'll explain later. Professor Pistone will speak, and then Father Art will speak, and then we'll do another breakout session and have questions at the end. However, if you have questions throughout the entire webinar, you're welcome to put them into the chat, and we will come back to them at the end. So let's see, that's all of it. So our speakers for today. We have a dynamic duo here. We have Professor Michele Pistone, who is a law professor at Villanova University. She specializes in immigration law, and she was the founding director of the Clinic for Asylum, Refugee, and Immigrant Services, or CARES. She serves as advisor to the Holy See Mission to the United Nations and is the creator and founder of the Villanova Interdisciplinary Immigration Studies Training for Advocates, or VISTA. And that's only a small portion of what she does and who she is. Father Arthur Purcaro, or Father Art, worked in the Augustinian mission in Chulucanas, Peru from 1975 until 2015, except during 95 to 2007 when he served as Assistant General to the Order in Rome. Today, he's Assistant Vice President and Adjunct Professor at Villanova University. He is credited for getting the Augustinians recognized in the United Nations. So as I said, short for people who've done a lot of things, but I'm sure they'll tell you a little bit more when they speak. So right now, we're actually going to go into breakout sessions, which means that we're going to take you out of this big room and put you into a group of 3. And we're going to ask you to just talk amongst yourselves about the question, why did you come to this session today? So sort of what drew you into this session? Why did you want to come? And you'll get 5 minutes there, and we will pull you back out after the 5 minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to us in the chat. So again, why did you come here today? We're going to go right into that breakout room. So, 36, math, here we go. Mm. We just went into breakout rooms a little while ago, if you're curious. So they'll be coming out in just a minute here. Okay. And just so you know, they were just talking about why they all came today.
So welcome back, everyone. We wanted to use that as an opportunity for you to get to know each other and for us to start building community and a conversation around the issues that we're going to talk about tonight with respect to immigration within the framework of C-Judge Act. So we feel that it's really important to understand problems, to judge them, but the really important part of what we want to get across through this session tonight is how we can all play an active role and be part of the solution. And we want to guide you there and think about ways that we can all act so that we can work proactively to help migrants and refugees. So I'm going to start this next session for about 15 minutes talking about the C part of the equation. So I'd like to share my screen. And so what we think about and want us to talk about when we think about C is it's really important to me, and in my experience as being a law professor teaching immigration for more than 20 years, I see the transformational value and importance of what I refer to as an encounter, or what Brian Stevenson refers to as proximity. That there's something that comes from understanding and seeing someone else's struggle and seeing the world through the eyes of another. And I think it's just as important in immigration as it is in other areas to really engage with and understand immigrants and see their the struggles and the opportunities through their perspective. And so I want to talk a little bit with you for a few minutes about my own experiences working with immigrants. I work and run a clinic at Villanova Law School in which we provide free legal services to immigrants. And also I just started a new program to train immigrant advocates. But I thought that before we start on that, we could together read a poem. And this poem is called Home. And it's written by a Somali refugee who's living in England. And so I thought we could use it kind of as a prayer so that we can get grounded and centered and really start this work of seeing the world through the eyes of another. So I'll read it to you, and I have the words on the screen. Home by Warsan Shire. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats. The boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home doesn't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you, fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought of doing until the blade burnt threats into your neck. And even then you carried the anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in an airport toilets, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear that you wouldn't be going back. You have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled means something more than journey. No one crawls under fences. No one wants to be beaten, pitied. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison, because prison is safer than the city of fire, and one prison guard in the night is better than a truckload of men who look like your father. No one could take it. No one could stomach it. No one's skin would be tough enough. To go home, blacks, refugees, dirty immigrants, asylum seekers, sucking our country dry, niggers with their hands out, their smell strange, savage, messed up their country, and now they want to mess up ours? How do the words, the dirty looks roll off your backs? Maybe because the blow is softer than a limb torn off, or the words are more tender than 14 men, well, between your legs, or the insults are easier to swallow than rubble, than bone, than your child body in pieces. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of a gun. And no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore, unless home told you to quicken your legs, leave your clothes behind, crawl through the desert, wade through the oceans, drown, save, be hunger, beg, forget pride, your survival is more important. No one leaves home in a sweaty, no one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave. Run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here. This is emotional for me because I've represented clients and I know this story. I've heard this story. So let me tell you about the work that I do. And so I am a law professor at Villanova, and I've been teaching at Villanova for 20 years. 20 years ago, I started a clinic. It's called CARES, as Lacey said, and we represent asylum seekers, my students and I, mostly second and third year students. And we take on the cases of asylum seekers who've had to flee their home for reasons like we've heard in this poem. And the thing that I find so beautiful about the work that I do, and I feel so privileged to be able to work with migrants and refugees, is that each encounter that I have with a migrant or refugee makes me stronger as a person and makes me appreciate so much what I have and the privilege that I have, but also it helps me to remember why I think this country was founded, because it was founded for the freedoms, and so much of why our country was founded was to provide protection for people who were fleeing persecution and who couldn't stay on their homelands and who had to leave. So for me, working with refugees is a constant reminder of the beauty of our country and why we need to fight for migrants and refugees and help people to understand their story and their plight and to see things from their perspective. So for me, it's really important to work with students during the formative stage of their professional development while they're still in law school, because it's an opportunity to expose them to issues that will hopefully form them as professionals and help them to become lawyers who care about the poor, the disenfranchised, the migrant. So many of my students have gone on to become immigration lawyers, and even those who are not actively practicing immigration law, they have a connection to this issue because of that encounter, because of the fact that they met, they helped, they understand, and they've seen migration from the perspective of a migrant. And so that's the course that I have developed and have been teaching for many years now. And then a few years ago, I started a new program, which I am so excited about and really thrilled to be able to share with you. It's called Vista. And it's an online multidisciplinary program designed to train immigrant advocates. So these are people who might go to law school but don't have to go to law school. And there are regulations in the books that allow for non-lawyers to provide much needed legal services to immigrants and refugees in immigration court and before the Department of Homeland Security. And so this picture, this image that I'm sharing with you now, is an image that I created to show what I think VISTA does in terms of filling a hole in the legal services ecosystem. So on the left side, I have a description of all the immigrant families, and there are so many immigrant families who are in need of legal assistance. You know, we know that 6 out of every 10 immigrants who goes to immigration court does so without the help of an advocate. And that includes children. In fact, I was motivated to start this program because I was in court one day and I saw a young girl at counsel table in an immigration court speaking to the judge because alone, she didn't have an advocate by her side. And the whole system is much better if people have advocates. So, there are so many people who need to understand the immigration system, need to understand the laws in order to be fully represented. And these are the quotes that I hear from them on a regular basis. How do I protect my family? Come with me. I'm afraid. Where do I go? Help me keep my family together. What do I say? What do I do? Like people are confronting the immigration system on a daily basis without any understanding of their fundamental rights. And then on the other side of the diagram are representatives of what I call champions for immigrant justice. There are all these people like you, who want to understand immigration and see the value that immigrants bring to the community, and they want to become part of the solution. They believe in peace and justice. They want to take action. They want to make a meaningful impact. They want to understand how the system works. And the thing that is really the bridge is VISTA. It's education. Like, people want to know, but there's no place where they can go to get an education about immigration law. So that's why I started VISTA. And it's designed, like I said, to train immigrant advocates, and it's really accessible. The tuition is only $4,000, and it's a whole year of education. And we're really lucky because we got some scholarship money from the Augustinian Foundation and also from the province of Augustinians in Villanova to provide scholarships to people to take the program. So if any of you know of people who might be interested, you should send them our way. In fact, Lacey is a graduate of our pilot program, and she's running and selecting the scholars for our first set of scholars for the program. And so the one thing about this that I think is so important is that really the work that we're doing at Villanova and one of the reasons that the Augustinians are supporting this project so deeply is that we all know that there was that this is part of our history as Catholics and as Augustinians. And so this is a flyer that I found recently, and it's warning people Catholics in Philadelphia to be careful because there were riots and there was the burning of the Augustinian Church in Philadelphia on May 8th in 1844. And so the reason that Villanova is in the suburbs, and Villanova University is in the suburbs and not in the city of Philadelphia, is that St. Augustine Church was burned down in Philadelphia when there were riots against Catholics. So this is important, I think, and it's important for us to share these stories with our children and with our families so that we remember that there was a time when we were being persecuted. And And this is another image that I saw recently about the awful riots in Philadelphia, again, against Catholics. And this one, too, I think is so interesting because to me, the rhetoric is always the same. It's just that there's a different scapegoat. So in the past, the scapegoat was Catholics. And here we see this flyer and how they were opposed to papal aggression and Roman Catholicism and foreigners holding office. So, and nunneries and the Jesuits. And so to me, it's a sign and just a reminder that in part we're fighting for migration because we were once a migrant ourselves and we were once oppressed, and now we can become part of the solution. So now I want to turn it over to Father Art, who's going to talk about judge. So I talked about see, and he'll talk about judge, and then we're going to ask you in small groups to think about how you can act on behalf of migrants and refugees. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, if I can. There we go. Okay.
Father Art, you're muted.
All right. So we're fortunate to have Michele get us deeply involved in the matter at hand, which are people, the people who she has encountered, refugees, migrants. She's helped us see. And this second part of the methodology is try to see from a different point of view. It's never easy to try to see from somebody else's point of view, but try to see from the absolute other's point of view. Try to see things from God's point of view. So as hard as it is for me to see from your point of view or you to see from mine, all of us together trying to understand a completely different point of view, and particularly in our own culture. This is where we were born. This is where we were brought up. This is what we believe. And what we're trying to do is confront our experience of people with God's understanding of people, which may not be exactly what you and I think of. So we're striving to see things from God's perspective, and we know that God looks at every human being with love. A parent who is incapable of saying no, who is self-giving, entirely giving. It's a very difficult point of view. We're going to try to allow ourselves in this model of learning to be questioned, to question ourselves, but to be questioned by Scripture, God's point of view, and our understanding as church, the 4 basic principles of Catholic social thought, which you've had on the website to take a look at beforehand. We'll just briefly look at them. Much more interesting is hear experiences and be able to respond to questions. But so we'll try to see things from God's point of view. And we all know, Old Testament, New Testament, they tell us compelling stories of encountering people who are in need and how God reaches out to those in need. The stories of an entire people, the Old Testament, the great Exodus story, they're suffering oppression. And to seek liberation, be led into a new world, a promised land, how they wandered homeless through the desert for 40 years. We can't imagine that poem that Michele blessed us with at the beginning. Imagine entire people wandering, seeking a home, longing to sleep in their own bed, cook their own food, to be loved and cared for as people. They were thrown out, they were looked down upon, and God looked on them and gave them a home. No longer aliens. And he asked them to be that for the world forever. God's people are those who try to see as God sees, see others not as aliens, but as sisters and brothers. What a blessing, what a challenge And would that that were the only experience. It's constant, it's forever. Here, the Son of God becomes one with us, one for us, and has to flee with his parents for fear of his life. A paranoid authority figure was just threatened by this child born in a stable. That's what Matthew tells us. And we know from Jesus' experience how he reached out to those on the outside. He tried to make everybody feel, he formed community. This is who God is. God is relationships, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and God who is inviting us to be that one for another. So scripture from beginning to end, Matthew 25, I was hungry. I was homeless. I was prisoner. God, seeing as God sees, is to see one another as brother and sister. We're one family. One family. And these four principles of Catholic social thought, which are fundamental, which are essential, which if you've taken a look at the introduction or you want to do later, we're reminded these are basic permanent principles. Permanent. They're universal and permanent. And they constitute the very heart of Catholic social teaching. They need to be appreciated, we're told from the very introduction, in their entirety. Not just dignity, not just solidarity, as though any one of those were easy. It's all four of them need to be articulated, taken into account all at the same time. But what we're going to do is try to see them from our point of view, from the particularly Augustinian perspective, which we sum up in one word, community. It's a searching together. You and I, we're willing to listen to one another. We respect one another enough that I trust your point of view and I want to hear your experience. And God wants that for everybody. Everybody to be taken into account. Not only do we search together as though we were using one another, we share the fruits of our search together. We listen to one another and we're richer because we truly listen to one another. A different point of view challenges me, causes me, invites me to grow, to be more. And that's what God is. Relationships. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Three persons sharing their identity. You and I called to do that. Building broader concentric circles, bridges. As Vista is a bridge between those in need and those who want to help. Bridges, not walls. This is what we learn from our Augustinian background. What are challenges for us? Remember, we talk about Augustine, we know Augustine as Saint Augustine. We know Augustine as bishop. He's much more than that, just to remind ourselves. Born in Africa, 16 centuries ago, of African parents. These were indigenous people who were colonized. They were living the experience of the empire, the same Roman Empire at Jesus' time was present there. And so here Augustine, born as little Caesar Augustus, so pretentious. His parents wanted him to be a little prince. His parents wanted him to be from the very beginning more than he was. They saw in him a way out, a way of beyond. They saw in him possibility of education, financial security, a place to be admired in society. So they sent him away. His loving parents sent him away to school as a child, away to school as a young person. And here he was in the capital, the Roman capital of Northern Africa, among university students and professors from a backwoods town, speaking with an accent, trying to be who he was not. Be who his parents wanted him to be. He was frustrated and he left. He was a migrant. He went searching for better work across the sea. He went to Rome and found that it wasn't all that it was meant to be, all that they painted it up to be. He was mistreated. He was mispaid. He knows what it means to be a migrant. And he had some privilege, and his parents and family benefited from that. But then he woke up. Then he realized that, this is not making me happy to have this. This is not who I am. I am called to be for others and with others. So he left and he went back and changed his life and changed many people's lives because of his experience of joining people together in community, not like-minded men and women, people who were different. He had landowners living in the same house with the people who worked the land. He had educated people in the same house with people who didn't know how to read or write, never could. So Tarcisius van Bavel, who was one of the more excellent scholars, Augustinian scholars in recent times, he wrote a commentary on the rule, and what you see on the screen is what he said and says to us. Because the rule, 8 chapters, you'd read it in 20 minutes, yawning in between if you could, and hopefully you will take up the rule and help us understand how Augustine's life stands in society at that time and invites us to stand in society for something, for the positive encounter of each and every human being. So he says there, we could characterize the rule of Augustine as a call to evangelical equality of all people. It doesn't matter what color their skin or how much money they earn. The rule, it voices the Christian demand to bring all women and men into full community. This is our destiny. It's our vocation to be like God, fully alive. At the same time, the rule sounds an implicit protest against inequality in a society which is so marked by possessiveness, having possessions, mine, private property, pride. I did this. Power. According to Augustine, a true monastic community should offer an alternative by striving to build up a community that is not motivated by possessiveness, by pride, by power, but by love for one another. And in this sense, the rule of Augustine is socially critical. That's our invitation this evening, to face our society, the society we are blessed to live in, to enjoy the privileges we have and realize not everybody has them, but everyone, all of them, are sons and daughters of God. So these 4 characteristics, principles of Catholic social thought, the basic essential principles of which we believe, commented on by Augustine, extremely briefly, because you can read this yourself and meditate. It's a lifelong vocation to do that. It's a privilege to do that. To recognize that, yes, every human being, image and likeness of God, from the womb to natural death. Nobody is worth more and nobody is worth less. Augustine says it to his community, honor God in one another. We're temples of God. Imagine that, it's him saying that, him believing that, him trying to transform society into the city of God by living that out each day. What a challenge. People are treated as worth less. They smell different, as Michele reminded us. They're looked upon as different, as worth insignificance. And the second principle of Catholic social law, common good. This is the foundational principle. All the rest flow from dignity. But if we believe in dignity, everybody's worth everything. Everybody's worth the life of God. Augustine reminds us, well, to achieve the common good, the good for everyone, my personal good, my personal advantage, and many times need to be sacrificed. It's so foolish for me to tell this to people who are parents and grandparents. You live it every day. You give education, food to your children. You're not looking after yourself. But this to be the people who do that, who leave nobody out. This is God asking us, don't leave anybody out. The common good is enough for everybody. And the third basic principle, subsidiarity, the hardest one to even pronounce, but much more difficult to live, that we don't all have the same characteristics. We don't have all the same privileges, but we all are called to share all the benefits. God created everything for everybody. So we're saying, we believe, along with Augustine and the church, by these principles, is that we all have something to offer. Nobody can be written off because of where they come. They don't speak like you or I do. They don't look like, they don't smell like you and I do. We all have something. Are we willing to listen to it? Are we willing to encounter God in somebody else? And the fourth and final principle, simple. Solidarity. Would that it were simple. It flows from the other because we believe in the worth of everybody. But it's reaching out. It's not simply pious thoughts and, well, would that nobody were hungry. It's setting up a structure, a society, which reaches out and lets everybody know that they're worth it. Not everybody needs the same thing, but we all need God, and we all need one another. So these are the four principles of Catholic social thought, seen from an Augustinian point of view. With just to introduce this third part, so we've seen and talked a little bit about the situation of migrants, of refugees, our brothers and sisters, and we've tried to see it from God's point of view, with the Augustinian perspective, called to build up one family, community. Now we're asking you, me, each one of us, imagine if each one tonight could identify one activity that I'm going to commit myself to. But if it's an activity which is personal, it's not something I want the President of the Republic to do, or no, what am I going to do? What am I going to do which will involve others, my family, my community? What am I going to do which can be transformational? Charity is good, but it's not good enough. It has to ask, why are people hungry? Why are people left out? Why do we need what Michele, with the grace of God, offers? Why are we so inhuman to treat one another? So the idea is to simply think of one, if you're willing to share it, after the 5 minutes in the break room where you have share those activities, you could put it on our website. There'll be a Google Doc. Lacey knows all about this, and she'll be able to explain it to us, how it works, to encourage us to encourage one another. That if we're in this together, that's Augustine's line, isn't it? Then we're going to be better together. We with God, not without, and not God without us, can build the city of God, a better world for everybody.
So, great. Thank you, Father Art. The Google Doc he was talking about, I just shared in the chat, so you'll get the link there. But right now, we're going to go into our breakout groups once again. So just for another short 5 minutes. And we're going to talk about what is something, an action. What's your action going to be? And, we know it's early. You just heard this. So it could just be brainstorming, and that's okay. You don't have to have the action solidified yet, but this is just an opportunity to talk about it. So I'm going to put you into the break rooms again right now, and I'll let you guys know when it's time to come back.
And we'll have questions later, right?
Yeah, we'll reconvene for questions at the end.
Okay, good.
Oh, I need to set timer. Give me 1 second.
if there's an opportunity.
It's the same Congregation for Bishops,
Yeah,
1969, so
yeah.
50 years ago.
Hmm.
And in the quote in the book, there's also a slight gloss on it from the Mexico-U.S. Bishops' joint statement.
Okay. So hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you had a chance to think about ACT. So that's what we want to talk about now. We want to answer your questions, but also if you want to, we'd love for you to put into the chat some of the ideas that came out of ACT. Like what can you do? What steps can you take to encounter the migrant, to help the migrant? I'm lucky because there are two students in the audience who are in my Vista program, so I know what they're doing, Jenny and Marianne. But we'd love to hear more from you. So add those to the chat, and then we're really open to having a dialogue and using the last few minutes that we have together for questions. So if you have questions, unmute yourself and, come ask us whatever you want.
I have a question. I'm Carol.
Hi, Carol.
What does Villanova offer as like an avenue to assist if you're, kind of retired and you're not here all the time, but you want to do something or help out in some way?
Well, that's a great question because I think the Vista program, the one that I talked about earlier, there are quite a few people who are taking it who are what I call second careers. They're
Okay.
looking for something to do as a second career or even as a volunteer. And Marianne and Jenny, who are both on the call, could talk a little bit about it from their perspective. If you want to hear about, like Marianne, do you want to just say one word about your experience as someone who's coming back to school after a while?
Literally one word. One word. I don't have one word. Nothing like getting put on the spot. Thanks, Michelle. Well, I will say, yeah, I'm coming back to this as a adult learner. Let's call it that. Be as kind as I can to myself. It's a wonderful program. I have some experience doing accompaniments in court, which was organized through the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, and I went there and I said, I can do more. I feel like I can do more, and I have the luxury, the privilege of a supportive family to help to support me. And I would highly encourage you to do it because you can do it remotely. It's all remote if you really are interested. And if you'd like, I can text you, put in the chat my phone number, my email address. I'd be happy to speak to you offline about it if you're interested.
And if I could add on to what Marianne is saying there, Carol, because Vista is fabulous and we want everybody on the screen, but sometimes that's not a possibility. But the accompaniment program, which Marianne referenced, that's what got her interested in this, is the Archdiocese is promoting it. It's simply accompany somebody, being there with them, driving them to the court, being there during their interview. You don't have to know their language, or you just have to be human. You just have to be a brother or sister, and that's what they're looking for, somebody, a face, a human face, the face of God for one another. It's a beautiful, beautiful program. I know Lacey has been involved in it as well as Marianne. They can tell you much more about it, but it's a solid, concrete action that any of us could do. That occupies the time that we choose to donate to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Something to think about. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We actually the other night had a talk by someone who runs a program in Doylestown who does accompaniment. Marianne volunteers there, and it's truly transformative, the experience of accompanying a migrant to confront whatever system they're confronting. And even it's transformative for the migrant or the refugee herself or himself, but also for the person who's doing the accompanying. And so I would definitely, as Father Art said, suggest that as an opportunity. And there are groups that are working on accompaniment in areas around the country, including in Philadelphia.
Okay.
A lot of people are putting their proposed activities on chat, which are fantastic. Hopefully, we'll get all of them up on the website so you can look at one another and get ideas from one another.
Yeah, Marianne, could you put the link for? Okay, great. So other ideas. One other idea that I saw from Joseph is the idea of teaching children and others in the family about your own family's migration story. I think that is a really great thing that we can all do. And I would just recommend, especially for those of you who are associated with Villanova or another community that has access to ancestry.com, that there's such rich information available about your own migration story. Like, I just last year found the records from when my grandfather migrated from Italy, and it listed his skin color as dark. And I remember like how, like, it just moved me to be able to talk to my children about that and how Italians were considered dark. And now there are people who are just, who, so anyway, it's just, I think, very interesting and important for us to share our migration stories with our children and our family members.
Michele, if you could share that poem with us, that would be fabulous. It's very moving.
Yeah, the home poem. Yeah, I shared it with Lacey, so Lacey can put it up on the website.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I've already got it all set up. Don't you worry.
Great.
So also, Marianne, if you could put up the organization in Doylestown that does that is looking for accompaniment volunteers. So what other things came to mind when people were thinking about their actions? You can unmute your mic. You don't have to put it in the chat.
Yeah.
So Mary says, watch Immigration Nation, a series on Netflix. It shows what illegal immigrants go through.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about it on a listserv that I'm on with immigration law professors. And it seems to really depict it very well. So it's definitely worth watching.
Marianne? Marianne?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Or I guess I wanted to talk to Michele. But anyway, Michele, you reminded me in telling the immigration story that one of the things that I'm able to do is to post as much as I can from what I read on Facebook, on Twitter. So the other night, I was looking up some church history type stuff, local church history, and I found this article on the nativist movement here in Philadelphia. And I'm sure Father would be very aware of this because one of his churches, St. Augustine, was burned to the ground because of this movement. And it was the nativists who didn't want the immigrants to come here, specifically the Irish and the Germans. And there was a whole time there, and there was all sorts of name calling. And what I posted was this article, and I said, if any of these accusations against immigrants resonate with you, then it would, because they're not new, because they happened at the nativist riots. And so different things like that I'll try to post. And I get comments back, people saying, they disagree. And, they rebel against immigrants today for the same reasons. But I'm trying to educate people that, because I'm half Irish descent, half Italian, half Irish, that, our people were treated just as badly as we treat the immigrants today. But they don't, a lot of people don't understand that. They think they came and everybody welcomed us. They wanted us to be here. A few months ago, I read an article where New York brought all these people in to build the subway, and then the people, once the subway was built, the people said, "Okay, let's send them all back now." And it's, it's really funny, but I mean, this happens. We just aren't always welcoming people. This whole thing about the melting pot, and I don't know where this all came from, but so anyway, that's something I try to do, find as much as and when I read, I find something, try to post it on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it goes back to that point that Joe raised about teaching ourselves about our own immigration history. And I think when you read about the nativists in Philadelphia and the burning down of St. Augustine Church, you remember that it was, I think, it's the reason that Villanova is in the suburbs, because the church was burnt down in the city, and they had to flee the city and find safety in another part. They had to migrate from Philadelphia into the suburbs so that they could be safe against the nativists. And we all have those stories in our past. And so part of, I think, understanding our own history helps us, again, to feel empathy with the migrant and to see them as ourselves. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that the dignity, see the others as people. These are our family. When I treat my brother, my sister this way, understanding that nobody is worth more and nobody is worth less, even though our society would lead us to believe that some are worth more. We're an alternative community saying no. There's nobody who's not worth everything. So we have different characteristics, and if we respect one another, we appreciate one another, the characteristics, more than anything else, it's the encounter with people, discovering God in one another.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we have to look at it that way. Our world is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
One interesting thing in Philadelphia, if you are Italian, okay, there is a real connection between the Italian immigrants and the Augustinians. When they, if you look at South Philadelphia with Our Mother Good Counsel, with St. Nicholas, with St. Rita, there's that whole area, although it's been serviced by the Augustinians for years and years and years. But really, it's the story of all the immigrants who came here. My family, for example, who came and settled there. And it's, to get that appreciation into the younger people, to recognize that, your grandfather was involved in this. I mean, this is what he found and the prejudices that he found against him when he first came here. It gives you a greater appreciation of maybe what some of the newer folks moving into South Philadelphia
Yeah,
are
definitely.
experiencing.
Right. Yeah, I always find reading about, I'm Italian too, Joe, and when I read about the critiques of Italian migrants in the early 1900s, you could substitute out Italian and put in, like, Honduran or Salvadoran or Mexican, and it's the same story. It's just a different group of people that are the scapegoats.
Right.
And so I think history is an important part of this because it helps us to see the migrant as ourselves. So it's a little bit after 8:30 now, and I know that we were gonna go until around 8:30. So are there any other comments, questions, thoughts, anything else that you're gonna do to act? I think a big theme that we heard today is accompaniment and kind of getting involved and seeing what we can do in our own communities to accompany migrants. And like Father Art said, it's really simple. It could be something as simple as helping them get their children enrolled in school, or helping them find a church that they want to participate in, a faith community in their new home, or providing meals or rides to court, or really anything to help people when they're newcomers and need to navigate a new world. So that's one theme. I think that was loud and clear. Another one is if you want to take the next step and actually educate yourself about accompaniment and immigration law and policy, you can look into Vista at Villanova, which is that course that just launched in August. And then I think another theme that's coming out of this is having conversations and doing some research about our own immigration history. That's actually part of the course that I created, the Vista course, because I really do think it's important for us to understand our own migration stories, both the migration story of the Augustinians and of Catholics and nativism and how we were persecuted and have had to flee, but also the story of your own family, and to share those stories with your children and with your extended family so that we all can see ourselves in the migrant. So for me, those are the three big themes that came out of the ACT part. And I think if we did some of those, we would really all we'd make a difference in the world and in our families and in ourselves.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's a great opportunity I had to share with you, and look forward to reading what you'd like to do, the activity you'd like to carry out. We'll look for it on our Google Doc on the website.
I'll be sending the Google Doc out with the next email too, if anybody didn't get to write in it.
Thank you.
Great.
So basically what we tried to do, the way we framed this, was to see, to judge, and then to act. And so we'd love to hear how you act to advance the messages that we shared tonight.
Great.
Lacey,
Yes, Father Jack.
have you done a commercial for the next series that we're going to do?
No, please do. Go ahead. Thank you.
On our follow-up series, the title of it is going to be Racism/Black Lives Matter. And we're in the process now of consulting with some experts, and we'll have some information for you probably within a week or two. All right. So stay tuned. It's going to be a good one.
Great.
Well, good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I was late.
That's okay.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Lacey.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
See you, Paul.
Night.
Thank you. Excellent job.